What's up, ego hackers? Welcome to the C.S. Joseph podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing, obviously, the problematic psychosis that is rotting away society naturally, which is subconscious development, also known as SDism. And this ism continues to be dangerous for the future of society and is rotting away at its core. And one of the ways it's doing that through men, because subconscious developed men have this odd behavior about them since they are, generally more effeminate. And we actually explain and go into depth about why subconscious developed men are effeminate. We do it on the Hacked Off podcast. It's another YouTube channel. It's also on Spotify. I think we got like 8 episodes now, and they're pretty long. Usually average about an hour and a half long per episode. But if you want to go check those out, just go search Hacked Off Podcast, and you'll find the show. It's a nice show. Very gritty, not for the faint of heart, and quite vulgar. But at least we get down to the basics of just how bad subconscious development really is for the sake of society. Anyway, be that as it may, I think we all could benefit from being a little bit honest about subconscious developed male behavior. And I often talk about how these men are succumbing to groupthink on a regular basis. But groupthink ends up becoming far more dangerous than people realize. If you read the Crucible, Salem witch trials, groupthink often leads to mob mentality and witch hunts in which subconscious developed men end up causing some severe problems relating to their relationships with other people, especially men. And this oftentimes comes from game of telephone, right? It's all about the game of telephone. Because here's the thing, they're making decisions entirely based on perception. So let me walk through the thought process. So let's say you have a scale of 0 to 100 in terms of percentages, right? And you have below 50%. This is possible, right? This is possible. And then above 50%, even though technically plausible and possible are the same definition, I would argue that above 50% is plausible, right? And then above 80% is likely. That is what we would call a likelihood. Now, I could be wrong, and, there's going to be that jackass in the comments who's like, oh, no, that's not true. It should be, distributed this way. I'm like, fine, then educate me. Educate me on absolute value and standard deviation and tell me how to do it right, and I'll be happy to fix it. If anyone in the audience would like to be that anal, go for it. Now, so, game of telephone. So how their judgment basically works, because they're all about perception. If they can imagine it, or if they can dream it, then to them automatically the chances of a thing happening is above 0, right? Because subconscious developed men are so obsessed with comfort, and they're so obsessed with safety, and they're very invested in their own survival, more so than the survival of people around them. This is why they're more solipsistic and not as idealistic, right? Because of that, they're very, very good at spotting dangers because they're hypersensitive to danger, because in general, subconscious developed men don't know how to handle danger because their brains need to realize that decision-making is how you handle danger. Quick, accurate, capable, sharp decision-making. But subconscious developed men are like butter knives. They're not really sharp. They're not really sharp at all with their decision-making. So this ends up presenting a problem. And so as a result, they're more mentally invested. They have more mental pathways in being able to spot danger, but that's more of a female thing. And this is another example of how subconscious developed men are effeminate. They're effeminate men. They're the metrosexuals of the world. They should probably pass their rite of passage and then become unconscious developed. If you want to learn more about rite of passage and how to become unconscious developed as a man, you should really listen to the Hacked Off podcast, because that podcast literally goes into detail about how and why to do it. All right? So just look at the details. Just go check that out. It's pretty simple. Like, it's not hard. Just listen to the show. There's 8 episodes, and so 8 times an hour and a half. Well, that's about 12 hours worth of content ready for you. Just go there, binge it, check it out. But yeah. Anyway, so they will perceive something. And they end up having this weird bias about themselves where it's like, hey, if I'm able to perceive this thing, if it's above a 0% chance, then that means it's 100%. So it's like this walking false equivalency crap. And this is how they arrive to conclusions on an individual basis. They perceive a thing. If it has an above 0% chance, then they automatically act as if it's 100. They also do the reverse. If something is below 100% chance, they will act as if it is 0%, as if it's not going to happen. So what ends up happening is that these men end up becoming double-minded and always oscillating back and forth in extremes, okay? The book of James in the Bible actually calls out these men directly in the first 2 chapters, such as a double-minded man. I mean, everyone should read the book of James, because that book just exists to criticize Christians, which I love. You know, you got the brother Jesus calling out Christians for being shit. And he's like, stop being shit, because y'all are being shit. And it's hilarious. So, love it. You should read it. Book of James. If you ever want to criticize Christians, just read that. You're good to go. So, yeah, pretty simple. So they have this above 0% and this below 100% thing. So if it's below 100%, basically, it's like an algorithm, or like just some logic in terms of how they make decisions with their perceptions. This is actually impulsive people, not just subconscious development. This is unconscious developed women act this way. This is why this is a female judgment approach. This is how female judgment works, or this is how it should work, as unconscious developed women are how women should be. You know, so, and that is basically, if the thing that I am seeing, if the possibility that I am observing is below 100%, then I assume it is 0%, right? Or if the possibility that I am observing, or the chances of something happening that I am observing, is above 0%, then I assume 100%. And then you add on top of that a bias towards the negative, not a bias towards the positive. It is pessimistic. So there's this bad thing that could happen, or there's this good thing that won't happen, right? And there's this good thing I want, so SD man, he's wanting sex, but then he realizes that there's a reduced chance during the day that he'll be able to have sex with his woman. So he just assumes it's not going to happen and then starts acting out accordingly. What a fucking loser. But that's like the typical, right? So this is what we call impulsive judgment, right? Their judgment is shit. Their judgment is entirely irrational. It may follow a logical or rational process, but it is not well thought out. And it's because their neural pathways are not really developed in terms of decision making. A woman's neural pathways should not be. Why? Because they need to have the neural pathways of spotting danger, because that's what protects themselves and children, because they are the vulnerable sex. Versus men, who are the disposable sex, needs to be invested in judgment and decision making, how to handle danger after it's been spotted, basically. That's the whole point. So now let's talk about some of the bad effects of how this difference in judgment actually works. So for example, let's say there is a group of SD men, okay? Let's say they own a gym, and let's say if they all have a white nationalist ideology that they're trying to conceal from the rest of the community, right? And then they end up kicking out some guy who is not white enough for them, apparently, because apparently he's too Eastern European or whatever. I don't know. So they kick him out. Then that person that they kicked out of their group starts criticizing them and not liking their behavior because they're a bunch of hypocrites, these SD men. Guess what? The man that was kicked out happens to be unconscious developed. So they kicked them out. Naturally, the SD man is going to kick out an unconscious developed male. And actually, the next episode, we're going to be discussing a little bit how and why that happens when we discuss Dr. Hugbox. But this is a thing, and it's a thing that keeps happening. So the UD man gets kicked out. The UD man ends up criticizing them. And then the UD man basically goes dark. And then one of the SD men is like, observes a possibility. Oh my God, what if this guy like calls the cops on us, right? What if? See, this is how imploders think. They're always considering the what ifs. And it's annoying. It's all about the what if. It's all about the great what if, right? They're acting like women, frankly. They're just acting like women. And it's ridiculous. Why are these men acting like this? But yeah, that's how they are. It's disgusting, frankly. It's like very disgusting. So, as a result of that, one guy has this what if scenario, oh my God, and then they're like, oh my God, the chance is above zero, so we need to act as if that is actually going to happen. And it creates this echo chamber. It creates this groupthink echo chamber that leads to them making even more stupid choices collectively. It also turns into a game of telephone, because where one of the subconscious developed men in the group is like, oh my God, we're going to have some police SWAT team, break down our gym and take us out or whatever because we're white nationalists or some bullshit like that. It's just like, y'all are fucking stupid. It's like, no. It's just like, leave us the fuck alone. Leave the UD guy alone. He doesn't want to have anything to do with you anyway. But the fact that he's like gone dark and just is not having anything to do with them, it leads them into their stupid echo chamber of SDism, where they're going to continue to have these stupid what if scenarios that they're constantly thinking about. And these what if scenarios are going to get worse and worse and worse for them, right? The stupid what if scenarios. And it's hell annoying. And then they start acting out in such a way where every single what if scenario that they were predicting actually ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they have the little game of telephone, they have their little echo chamber. Every guy is building on one what if scenario to another what if scenario. And they're acting like a bunch of women, scared girls, in a group. And this is extremely common. Yeah, I know I used a weird example here. But let's look at a different example. Let's look at an example of a church. Because church is dominated by subconscious developed behavior, subconscious developed culture. And this is very common with church. They all act this way. This is why I recommend people don't go to church. Avoid going to church as possible. Definitely read the Bible and apply critical thinking to it. Find other people who want to have critical thinking in the Bible and do it that way. Have Bible studies and shit and pray for each other and be there for one another. But don't go to church. Church is where all the retired hoes are anyway. Why would you want to go to church and get a woman there? Disgusting. You're not going to find a virgin at church. Just not really. I mean, you might in Asia, but not here. Especially if Sophie Rain, of all people, can be like, oh, I'm still a virgin. Yeah, I make $100 million a month on OnlyFans, and probably going to be, signing a $1 billion deal with OnlyFans, even though I'm like the world's greatest hoe. I'm claiming to be a virgin, and don't worry, I'm a Christian because Jesus will forgive me anyway. And I'm just like, lady, that is not how that works. That is not how that works. Like, there's supposed to be conviction on that. Like, this whole assumption that, like, you can just tap into salvation through the blood of Jesus Christ at any moment to serve your own ends at any moment, I find reprehensible. We need to really work hard to become masters of our own sin, if possible. I mean, I think the book of Genesis has kind of outlined that point just a bit. But the bottom line is that when you're looking at subconscious developed male judgment, it doesn't exist. This is one of the reasons why SD men have to kind of gum together in a group, because it's no different than a bunch of women coming together in a group because they don't have decision-making skills. Women are inferior in terms of decision-making compared to men. So when you see subconscious developed men who are effeminate, acting like women with their little stupid-ass fucking echo chamber, I think that's bullshit. And they do this consistently. And they have no concept of proper decision-making. They're acting like a bunch of women. And then everything they set out to do will ultimately fall apart. I have a question. What if the fools and the foolishness and the folly pointed out by the book of Proverbs and the book of Ecclesiastes, written by Solomon, etc., King Solomon, right? The wisest man who ever lived. Like, if that's the case, like if that was actually a thing, then tell me, is he referring to subconscious developed men versus unconscious developed men? Because from my perspective, a UD male is the only one capable of actually having sober judgment. These SD males, no. It's all about how things look. It's like, because in the absence of communication or explanation, perceptions become reality. That is subconscious developed male way. And because subconscious developed men, they absolutely love themselves. Security, comfort, it's why they always get them their safe, secure job. They love all of that, okay? To the point where it's actually like a form of idolatry, if you think about it. Because if you're a man and you're not relying on God to provide and trusting God to provide in your life, of course you're going to want to get that safe, secure job. This is why unconscious developed men are actually a bit more spiritual than subconscious developed men from this point of view, right? And so because of that, subconscious developed men end up committing idolatry with society. Because it's like, oh, society will be my safety net, right? Because they're obsessed with their safety nets, their safe, secure job, their retirement plan, their insurance policies. It's all about safety nets, right? You have to have a safety net. Well, that's a big problem. Safety nets. So they have their safety nets, and often, they try to create this big safety net because they have a bunch of subconscious developed men in a fucking group trying to make decisions. But they can't make decisions because they're all acting like girls. Because, again, perceptions become reality. And then they end up making those perceptions, those what-if scenarios that they're observing, they actually making them come true. And I think that's terrible. Ultimately, I think it's just bullshit. In an unconscious developed male circle, things are a little bit different. Unconscious developed men have their own individual judgment. They shove unsolicited advice down each other's throats and sharpen each other and make each other better as a cohesive unit. And they're always accepting of unsolicited advice from each other. And they never make a choice without running it by their bros first. That's the point. Okay, that's what it's all about. So these are the men, these are the people, right? the UD ones, the real ones, not this shit show that we have everywhere else. So, but yeah, try to like figure that out. Try to like understand the problem. You want to avoid that subconscious developed male fucking disgusting reprehensible groupthink echo chamber crap. So don't act like that. Pass your rite of passage, guys. Hacked Off podcast for more. And hey, if you don't know what your cognitive development is, go to octagram.me. It'll tell you what your cognitive development is. If you want to learn more about your type, and how to use type grid 5, and how to properly psychoanalyze everyone based on all these things, including their Octagram, school.com/CSJoseph. SKOOL.com/CSJoseph. Now, when faced with the echo chamber, there's really only one thing you can do. Doesn't matter if you're man, woman, doesn't matter your development, doesn't matter your Octagram, okay? There's only one thing you can do, and that is remain silent. Because the less input you give to the subconscious developed echo chamber telephone game, the less you interact, they will eventually self-destruct. Because there's no input, and basically what's happening is that they are living in fear. These men are acting like cowards and living in fear. They're all yeller. And because of that, well, that's how you defeat them. So if you find yourself in a situation like that UD man who was kicked out of this group, right? And they're like, oh, you know, you're not giving us the good vibes, man. You know, yeah, because he's criticizing them and telling them how fucking retarded and how hypocritical they are. When they get this guy kicked out, then they're having a little echo chamber. Him not interacting with them just ends up striking more fear in them, because their what-if scenarios will continue to build on top of each other. And they will slowly, over time, literally have no, they'll have no solid ground underneath their feet, and they will completely fall apart. It's a house built upon the sand instead of built upon the rock. So, all right, folks, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching and listening. I'll see you guys on the next episode.